Here is your full YouTube script. Pure text, no formatting markup, ready to paste directly into your editor or teleprompter. Doctors are finally admitting what really causes sudden weakness after 60. If you are over 60 and you have noticed that your legs feel heavier than they used to, that getting up from a chair takes more effort than it should, or that a walk around the block leaves you more drained than it ever did before, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I am about to share with you could genuinely change the way you feel every single day. This is not another video about eating your vegetables or drinking more water. This is about something that most doctors have been slow to talk about openly, something that researchers have been quietly uncovering for years, and something that, once you understand it, will make complete sense of everything your body has been trying to tell you. Stay until the end, because the third factor I will reveal is the one that almost nobody is talking about, and it may be the most important thing you hear all year. Let's start with something that most people over 60 experience, but almost no one fully understands. You wake up one morning and you feel fine. You are not sick. You do not have a fever. Nothing hurts in an obvious way, but your body just feels less energetic, less capable, less like the person you used to be. You push through it because that is what your generation does. You assume it is age. You assume it is just the way things go. And here is the painful truth. Most doctors, at least until very recently, were telling you the same thing. They were calling it normal aging. They were chalking it up to the natural decline of the human body. And they were wrong. Not entirely wrong, because yes, the body does change after 60, but the sudden accelerating nature of the weakness that so many people experience after that milestone birthday is not simply aging. It is something far more specific, far more understandable, and this is the part that matters, far more addressable than anyone has been letting on. The conversation is finally shifting. In the last few years, a growing number of researchers, longevity specialists, and yes, even some mainstream physicians have started to come forward with a more honest picture of what is happening inside the body after 60. And the picture they are painting is both alarming and surprisingly hopeful. Alarming because the causes are real and specific and have been hiding in plain sight. Hopeful because when you understand them, you can actually do something about them. So let us talk about what is really going on. The first thing you need to understand is something called anabolic resistance. This is a term that has been circulating in sports medicine and gerontology research circles for over a decade, but it has only recently started making its way into mainstream medical conversations. Anabolic resistance refers to a reduced ability of the muscles to respond to protein and exercise. In a younger body, when you eat protein or put your muscles under physical stress, the body responds by building and repairing muscle tissue efficiently. After 60, this process becomes sluggish. The muscles essentially become less sensitive to the signals that tell them to grow and maintain themselves. Think of it like a car that no longer responds well to the gas pedal. You can press down just as hard as you used to, but the car does not accelerate the way it once did. This is why people over 60 who are eating what seems like a reasonable diet and doing what seems like a reasonable amount of activity are still losing muscle at a rate that shocks them when they finally step back and look at the numbers. The research shows that adults can lose anywhere from 3 to 8% of their muscle mass per decade after age 30, and that rate accelerates significantly after 60. This loss of muscle mass, which scientists call sarcopenia, is directly responsible for a huge portion of the weakness, fatigue, and physical decline that people experience as they get older. And here is the part that the medical establishment has been frustratingly slow to communicate. Sarcopenia is not inevitable. It is not simply a sentence you are handed at your 60th birthday. It is a condition with identifiable causes and identifiable solutions. The challenge is that most of the solutions require a recalibration of what you eat, how you move, and how you think about your body after 60. And those recalibrations are more nuanced than the generic advice most people receive. But muscle loss from anabolic resistance is only part of the story. There is a second factor that is even less talked about, and it has to do with the nervous system. Most people think about weakness purely in muscular terms. If I feel weak, my muscles must be weak. But the truth is that the connection between your brain and your muscles is just as important as the muscles themselves. This connection is mediated by your nervous system, specifically by something called motor unit recruitment. When you want to move, your brain sends signals through motor neurons to activate groups of muscle fibers. The speed, efficiency, and completeness of this signaling process determines how much force your muscles can generate. After 60, this process begins to degrade. Motor neurons die off and are not fully replaced. The surviving neurons try to compensate by taking over the muscle fibers that were once served by the dead neurons. But this compensation is imperfect. The result is a subtle but meaningful decline in the precision and power of muscle contractions. This is why people over 60 often describe their weakness in ways that go beyond simple fatigue. They say things like, "My legs just do not feel like mine anymore," or "I reach for something and my grip just is not there," or "I start to get up and my body hesitates in a way that never used to happen." That hesitation, that lag, that sense of disconnect between intention and action, that is the nervous system, not just the muscles. And this is something that almost nobody talks about when they discuss aging and weakness. The good news is that the nervous system, like the muscles, is more responsive to the right inputs than most people realize. The bad news is that most of the conventional advice about staying active after 60 does not specifically address neuromuscular health. It addresses cardiovascular health. It addresses flexibility. But the specific type of training that stimulates and preserves motor neuron function and improves motor unit recruitment is something that is only now starting to make its way into guidelines for older adults. We will come back to this. Before we get to the third factor, which is the one I really want you to pay attention to, I want to pause and ask you something. Have you already noticed some of what I am describing in your own body or in the body of someone you love? Are you watching a parent, a spouse, a friend lose ground physically in ways that feel too fast, too sudden, too much? If any of this is resonating with you, I want you to drop a comment below and tell me. Tell me how old you are, tell me when you first noticed the change, and tell me if anyone has ever actually explained to you what was happening, or if you have mostly been told to accept it as normal. I read every comment on this channel, and I genuinely want to know your experience. The more we share with each other, the more we all understand that this is not a personal failure. This is a physiological reality that has been inadequately addressed for far too long. Leave your comment below. You might just help someone else who is watching feel less alone in what they are going through. Now, the third factor, and this is the one I promised would be the most important. There is a substance in the human body that most people over 60 are severely deficient in, and the deficiency is almost never caught in routine blood work unless you specifically ask for it. And even when it is caught, the conventional response is often inadequate. I am talking about IGF-1, or insulin-like growth factor 1. This is a hormone produced primarily in the liver in response to growth hormone signals from the brain. It is one of the most powerful anabolic and neuroprotective substances in the human body. It drives muscle protein synthesis. It supports the health and function of motor neurons. It promotes cellular repair throughout the body. And after 60, levels of IGF-1 drop substantially in most people. The problem is that this drop is not linear. It does not happen gradually and evenly over decades. For many people, there is a threshold effect, a point where levels drop below a critical minimum and the body begins to decline in ways that feel sudden and dramatic, even though the underlying decline has been building for years. This threshold effect is why so many people describe the experience of aging as having a cliff, a point where everything changed faster than they expected. They were managing, they were okay, and then suddenly they were not. That cliff, for many people, corresponds to a significant drop in IGF-1 and the downstream effects that follow from it. Research published in major journals, including the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism and Aging Cell, has linked low IGF-1 to reduced muscle mass, impaired neuromuscular function, increased inflammation, cognitive decline, and a significantly higher risk of physical frailty. And yet, When most people over 60 go to their doctor and say, "I feel suddenly weaker and more fatigued than I used to," the response is rarely, "Let us check your IGF-1 levels and talk about what we can do to support your growth hormone axis." The response is more often along the lines of, "That is normal for your age. Let us check your thyroid and your vitamin D and try to get more sleep." That response is not wrong exactly, but it is profoundly incomplete, and people deserve better than incomplete. So what actually affects IGF-1 levels after 60, and what can be done about it? The first and most powerful lever is the quality and timing of protein consumption. This is not about eating more protein in some vague general sense. Research shows that older adults need significantly more protein than younger adults to stimulate equivalent rates of muscle protein synthesis, and that the distribution of that protein throughout the day matters enormously. A single large protein meal does not produce the same anabolic stimulus as protein distributed across multiple meals and snacks. The current recommended dietary allowance for protein, which sits at 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, is widely considered by experts in muscle health and aging to be inadequate for adults over 60. Leading researchers in the field suggest that something closer to 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram, or even higher for those who are physically active or dealing with illness, is necessary to counteract anabolic resistance and support IGF-1 signaling. This is a significant recalibration. It means that a 150-pound person, which is roughly 68 kilograms, may need anywhere from 82 to 109 grams of protein per day, distributed across meals, rather than the 55 grams technically required to avoid deficiency. And the type of protein matters too. Leucine, an amino acid found in high concentrations in animal proteins, eggs, and some plant-based sources like soy, is a particularly potent trigger for muscle protein synthesis. Ensuring adequate leucine at each meal is something that most people over 60 have never been told about, but that the research suggests can make a meaningful difference. The second lever is resistance exercise, but not just any resistance exercise, specifically the kind that involves progressive overload, meaning that you gradually and systematically increase the challenge over time. The muscle and nervous system adaptations that combat sarcopenia and neuromuscular decline do not happen in response to walking or light activity alone. They require the stimulus of actual resistance, of asking your muscles and your nervous system to do more than they are currently comfortable doing. For many older adults, this is a psychologically difficult shift. There is a deeply ingrained fear, often reinforced by well-meaning but cautious medical advice, that pushing yourself physically after 60 is dangerous. The reality is almost exactly the opposite. The research is remarkably consistent in showing that progressive resistance training is not only safe for most healthy adults over 60, but is one of the most effective interventions available for preserving muscle mass, improving neuromuscular function, and supporting hormonal health, including IGF-1. The danger for most older adults is not too much challenge, it is too little. The third lever involves sleep, and specifically the deep, slow-wave stages of sleep during which the majority of growth hormone release occurs. Growth hormone stimulates the liver to produce IGF-1. If sleep quality is poor, growth hormone secretion is impaired, and IGF-1 levels suffer. After 60, sleep architecture changes in ways that reduce the proportion of deep sleep, and this change has downstream effects on growth hormone and IGF-1 that most people and most doctors do not connect to the weakness and fatigue that follows. Addressing sleep quality, not just sleep duration, is therefore not simply about feeling rested. It is about maintaining the hormonal environment that your muscles and nervous system need to function and repair. This means taking sleep disruptions seriously, whether they come from pain, from nocturia, from sleep apnea, from stress, or from the simple dysregulation of circadian rhythms that tends to accompany aging. It means being willing to have a real conversation with a doctor about what is happening during the night, and not accepting you sleep less as you age as a complete and satisfying answer. Now, I want to go back to something I said near the beginning of this video because I think it bears repeating in a different way. The experience of sudden accelerating weakness after 60 is real. It is not imaginary. It is not weakness of character. It is not a failure to try hard enough or think positively enough or stay busy enough. It is a physiological event with specific identifiable causes. And the reason so many people have felt abandoned by the medical system in the face of it is not that their doctors are bad people. It is that the conversation around aging has been shaped for a very long time by a kind of resigned acceptance. We told ourselves that decline was inevitable, and so we stopped looking very hard for the levers that could slow it. That is changing. The science is changing. The honesty is changing. And you deserve to be part of that change, not left behind by it. Let me tell you about something that illustrates this shift in a very concrete way. There is a concept in the research literature on aging called the anabolic window of opportunity. This refers to the period immediately following resistance exercise, during which the muscles are most receptive to protein synthesis signals. In younger adults, this window is relatively forgiving. You can eat protein somewhat before or after exercise, and the anabolic response is robust. In adults over 60, the window is narrower and the response is blunted, meaning that the timing and composition of post-exercise nutrition matters significantly more than it does for younger people. Research suggests that consuming 30 to 40 grams of high-quality protein, particularly protein rich in leucine, within about an hour of resistance exercise can substantially improve the muscle-building response in older adults compared to eating the same protein at other times of day. This is a specific, actionable insight. It is the kind of thing that a nutritionist or a physiatrist who specializes in aging might tell you. But most people never see a nutritionist or a physiatrist. They see a general practitioner for 15 minutes, maybe twice a year, and they go home with generic advice that does not reflect the specificity of what the research actually shows. Here is another piece of this picture that deserves more attention: inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation, sometimes called inflammaging by researchers, is now understood to be a significant driver of muscle loss and neuromuscular decline in older adults. This inflammation is not the kind you feel acutely after an injury. It is quiet, systemic, persistent, and deeply destructive over time. It activates pathways that break down muscle protein faster than it can be rebuilt. It impairs the signaling between the nervous system and the muscles. It blunts the anabolic response to both exercise and nutrition. And it is driven by a constellation of factors that are unfortunately very common in the modern life of an older adult: poor sleep, a diet high in processed foods and refined carbohydrates, sedentary behavior, excess body fat, particularly visceral fat around the organs, and chronic psychological stress. The cruel irony is that the weakness and fatigue caused by inflammaging make all of these contributing factors harder to address. When you feel exhausted and depleted, you are less likely to exercise, less likely to prepare nutritious food, more likely to reach for comfort foods, more likely to sleep poorly, more likely to feel stressed and hopeless. It is a cycle, and breaking it requires both understanding what the cycle is and having specific, targeted strategies for interrupting it at multiple points simultaneously. One of the most underappreciated interruption points is the management of visceral fat. Most people focus on body weight in a general sense, or on the body fat that is visible and subcutaneous, the fat under the skin. But visceral fat, the fat that accumulates around the organs in the abdominal cavity, is metabolically very different. It is essentially an inflammatory organ in its own right, releasing a constant stream of inflammatory cytokines that contribute directly to the inflammaging cycle. Research has shown that older adults who carry significant visceral fat have measurably lower IGF-1 levels, more pronounced anabolic resistance, and faster rates of muscle loss, independent of their overall body weight. This means that a person can appear to be at a healthy weight and still be carrying enough visceral fat to significantly accelerate their physical decline. And conversely, targeted reduction of visceral fat through dietary changes and the right kinds of exercise can have measurable positive effects on IGF-1 levels and muscle health over a relatively short period of time. We are getting close to the end of this video, and before I leave you, I want to make sure you walk away with something concrete and actionable, because that is the point of all of this. Understanding what is happening is only the first step. What you do with that understanding is what matters. So here is a framework for thinking about the changes your body needs after 60, grounded in everything we have discussed today. First, recalibrate your relationship with protein. Stop thinking about protein as something you need to avoid for fear of kidney damage, which is a concern largely relevant to people with pre-existing kidney disease, not healthy older adults. And start thinking about it as the primary raw material your muscles need to resist the forces of sarcopenia and anabolic resistance. Aim for distribution across meals, prioritize leucine-rich sources, and pay specific attention to what you eat in the hour after any kind of resistance exercise. Second, take resistance exercise seriously, not as punishment, not as a chore, but as medicine. Specifically as the most powerful medicine available for preserving the muscle mass, neuromuscular function, and hormonal environment that your quality of life after 60 depends on. Start where you are. Work with a professional if you need to. Progress gradually, but progress. The goal is not to look like an athlete. The goal is to maintain the physical capacity to live the life you want to live. Third, become a serious advocate for your own sleep quality. Do not accept poor sleep as inevitable. Pursue the causes of sleep disruption with the same urgency you would pursue any other symptom that was undermining your health, because that is exactly what it is. Fourth, address inflammation through the levers you can control: food quality, stress management, and the gradual, consistent reduction of visceral fat. This is not about perfection. It is about direction. Every step in the right direction changes the inflammatory environment in your body, and the cumulative effect of those steps can be significant. And fifth, have better, more specific conversations with your doctors. Ask about your IGF-1 levels. Ask about your muscle mass relative to your age and your goals. Ask what specific interventions are available for the specific things that are declining. You deserve specificity. Do not settle for less. Now, before you go, I want to ask you one more time to leave a comment below. Tell me, what was the moment you first noticed that your body had shifted? Was it one specific day, one specific task that suddenly felt harder than it should? Or was it more gradual, a slow drift that you only recognized looking back? Your story matters. It matters to me, and it matters to the thousands of other people watching this video who may be going through exactly the same thing and feeling exactly as alone in it as you once did. Share it. Start the conversation, because we figure this out together, or we do not figure it out at all. If this video helped you understand your body better, or if it gave you at least one new thing to try or one new question to ask your doctor, I would really appreciate it if you would share it with someone over 60 in your life who might need to hear it. A parent, a sibling, a friend, a spouse. The information in this video does not do any good sitting here. It does good when it reaches the people who need it. So please share it forward. And if you want to go deeper on any of the topics we covered today, the specific exercises that best counteract neuromuscular decline, the dietary patterns most strongly associated with reduced inflammaging, the conversations to have with your doctor about IGF-1 and growth hormone support, make sure you are subscribed and that you have the notification bell turned on, because we go into all of that and more on this channel. There is so much more to say, and I am not done saying it. You are not at the mercy of your age. You are at the beginning of a better understanding of your body. And that understanding, combined with the right actions, can change everything. I will see you in the next video.